Hello, and welcome to the AV Forums podcast for Monday, the 24th of April, 2023. The more astute and alert of you will have noticed that I'm not Phil Hinton. We've killed and eaten him. No, we haven't. He's on holiday, so he's having some well-deserved time off. I'm Ed Selley, and I'm covering the presentation duties and saying more than I usually do. I'm joined in my pursuit of saying by Martin Dew, Ian Collen, Julian Scott, and Doug Pyper. So good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening. Good evening.
Hiya.
Right. Okay. Marvellous. This week, it's fun and action-packed. We don't need Phil to have a good time. We'll be looking at Emotiva's budget-priced AV process with Martin, talking about Bose and Wilkins 700 series as a multi-channel speaker with Doug. Jules is going to be talking about his first encounter with an LG G3 TV out in the wild. I will be talking about the Focal Vestia #1 a bit later on, and we'll have the usual roundup of TV, home cinema, and HiFi news from Ian, our small, calm voice of reason. And we'll be answering questions in the chat if you put questions in the chat. That's all for later on. Chat window is now open. So questions, and if you don't want to do that, you're listening later on, you can still send questions to podcast@avforums.com or add your comment to the thread underneath this podcast, and you'll find them at the bottom of the list. Sorry, I keep looking off screen. I've tried doing split screen things earlier on this laptop, and it fouled itself. So I have my iPad off screen with the running order. So I will be glancing worriedly to my left from time to time, so I actually see what on earth is going on. Right, we're going to kick off with some feedback, gentlemen. The first is about Phil. So it may have been written by Phil. Apparently it's AVF member Pulse 1, but it could be Phil. It says, glad to see Phil will be reviewing projectors again. And indeed, there is a review of his on the front page as we speak. We'll be there for the next couple of days. And he says we've got 5 new projector. Well, sorry, he doesn't say that. You'll be pleased to hear, Pulse One, we have 5 new projector reviews in the works. So loads and loads of projector reviews in the offing. This one's for me. NetWiz asked, is saying, last podcast, which does seem like a very long time ago, we were talking about that with a lot of the reviews that we do, we screen out products that we don't think are any good before we actually get to the business of reviewing them. He says, perfectly reasonably, as a consumer, a negative review can be just as useful as a positive one, particularly when all the actual reviews speak glowingly of the products with only small distinctions between them. Maybe you could do quick takes on products that you have doubts about. This is a perfectly reasonable request, and it's something that we can look into. The only catch is it is going to actually reduce the number of full-length reviews. I can't speak for the other reviewers here, but in order to actually find out if something is good, and I believe actually that Doug is going to go on about finding that it's taken a bit of time to get under the skin of the review that he's going to be talking about later on. So in order to determine that something is pretty good, you're going to spend as much time listening, testing, prodding, turning it on and off as you are for the full length review. So it's still going to cut into the number of actual individual reviews that we can deliver over the course of a year. Nevertheless, it's a valid point. Maybe there's some means of doing roundups or more bulk looking at that we can do. I mean, I still don't necessarily enjoy issuing a shoe into things. So if I think something is going to be an absolute howler, I still feel no particular urge to go near it. But it's a valid point, so we'll see what we can do. Right, I get to stop talking for a bit because Shinoizi, I think that's how that is pronounced, asks, where does one go to find an ISF certified calibrator near me in the UK? And how would I know if they're any good? Now, Jules, you're not an ISF calibrator. You confirmed this before we went live, but hopefully you've got some ideas in this regard.
I'm THX and PVA Professional Video Alliance. There are a number of organizations out there. ISF, probably the first one out, and then THX followed very quickly after them. But so you can either go to the organization's own website where you'll find a listing for all over the world. So if you go to ISF, go to THX, go to PVA, you'll find those listings. Or you could go to the AV Forums map, preferably to the AV Forums map, where we have a list of calibrators there. How do you know they're any good? Well, you kind of answered it in your second question, is that if a calibrator has been trained properly, they will be working with the established industry references, with the standards. So there really shouldn't be any end difference in how one calibrator calibrates an OLED, or what the resulting picture is like, if they're hitting those targets. So they should all be able to deliver the same picture. Projectors are a little bit more of there's more involved, particularly with HDR calibration of projector. There is points because you're dealing with 1,000 nit content and you've only got maybe with a trailing wind you might have 100 nits on a small screen. There's a lot more interpretation to get a projector looking HDR looking really good. But in essence, they're really, if everybody's working to the standards, there shouldn't be that much of a difference between them. You can check out the forums, the different threads on the different displays, and you'll probably find AV forums members talking about, I used X or I used Y, and I was happy with the results. So obviously with the caveat that people don't tend to put up stinging reviews. But I don't think I've seen any.
Is it not like Checker Trade? Essentially, that I always find there's two levels of review for Checker. It's either gone brilliantly or it reads like the plot of a disaster movie. People enjoy writing either of those types of reviews. They don't.
Yeah, what I see on the forums tends to be, I had so and so in, I was very happy with them. People pop up. There's a, considering a calibrator thread where you'll find people say, well, I use so and so. So there's lots of ways on AV forums you can find out who's doing a good job. And maybe that goes on to the next question.
Yes. Toonami states, I will definitely get my TV calibrated, most probably a G3 this year, unless Phil's review tells me otherwise. In order to maximize its performance, what is the recommended minimum screen time before calibrating, and is there any need to get it done again afterwards? Which is a pretty damn good question, actually.
Yep. On average, I would say at least 100 hours is recommended. More, if possible, 200. Some people want 300. I don't think it makes that much more difference as you go up. You don't need to wait for 1,000 hours. Of course, you can if you want to. But I'd say a minimum of 100 hours is recommended for running it in. And yes, there is a need for getting it done afterwards. These displays do drift over a period of time, and so you'll get if you are really on it, you might want to get it recalibrated in a year or 16 months. Obviously, there's a great deal of margin in terms of usage. How many hours you're putting in at any given time. THX used to recommend 16 months for a recalibration on plasmas. So, I have guys that say, right, this time next year, just like you'd book your car in for MOT, let's just, let's do it again. They want to make sure that their TV is absolutely running at top performance all the time. And some people, you might say, well, I'll see you when I buy the next panel. So, you might see them again in 3 years' time. It depends on your question, how much money you got, basically. It is worth getting it done. They do drift. How long you leave is really sort of as long as a piece of string.
Yeah, discretional.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Elliot Cole reckons £1,499 for the C342 is insanely over the previous version, ? No. It's been marked on the running order here. That's £100 more at launch. So I don't know whether this is simply an exercise in we just forget that obviously launch prices are a little bit higher and things do tend to drop over time. I'd also point out the same hobby horse I've been beating for the last year or so, that everything's getting a lot more expensive, a lot more quickly, and fundamentally £100 difference on a television. When you compare that to the price of a lot of other things, which have, broadly speaking, increased by a third, I didn't think that was too bad. But I'm afraid, I think, unless anyone's willing, has a counterpoint on this, I think that fundamentally it's unlikely that we're going to see any significant savings on any major piece of equipment with a plug over its previous generation models if they're being replaced at the moment. And then finally, Elliot Cole also adds, I went to check on the Hisense PX1 Pro. It isn't listed as Dolby Vision capable. What happened? We were discussing this again before we went live. Obviously, Phil is our projector guru, and we can revisit this when he returns from his holes. But as far as we know, Dolby Vision certification on projectors is slim to the point of non-existence at the moment, and we were racking our brains about short throw projectors, which the PX1 is, that has this. And unless someone's willing to get stuck into the comment and prove us look wrong otherwise. We weren't aware of any that do. So, it should, based on the specs, it should still be pretty bright, should still be pretty vivid. So, if in doubt, try and see what you think. So that's comments sorted. I'd like to start talking for a moment. So Phil has very quickly listed that he's on holiday, suckers. So, I mean, that's what he's doing.
He's tuned in tonight, though, Ed, isn't he?
Almost certainly. Almost certainly. But Jules, I'm intrigued. Why are you sporting a black eye?
Well, it's the heat of battle, isn't it, Ed? It's football. So yeah, clash your heads on Saturday, and so I've got a nasty bit of a black eye here, bit of a split eye. But
is it the case that you should see the other guy? I mean, was he stretched off?
No. I think I came off worse this week. The last game I played, and I went off with 3 stitches in my mouth as well. So my wife keeps telling me, "You're too old for this."
Not just punching yourself in the face watching Norwich games.
No. That's kicking myself somewhere else.
Oh, okay.
Although that would require some degree of dexterity on my part that I don't have anymore. So if I'm talking a load of dribble tonight, I'm probably still concussed.
No, well, that's fair enough. I mean, in the context of this, I'm sure that your base memory functions will cover television expertise. Doug, I haven't seen you in ages. What have you been up to?
I was on holiday, I went to Lanzarote, my first ever foray into package holidays. Which is a bit of a revelation when you got two little kids. Yeah. Actually, it was so easy. I mean, it's definitely not going to be our last package holiday. I can tell you that. So yeah, that's where I've been, and that's pretty much the most interesting thing I've done since I last saw you. On the subject of AV, I have replaced my main speakers. That was another thing that I've done in the interim with big pair of JBL SK2 3300s, which are some of their synthesis speakers, kind of modelled on the Everest, similar drivers to the Everests, which are incredible.
Yeah, and not small, I seem to recall as well.
They are massive. I'm struggling to fit them, really. It's absurd having them in the living room, really. It's very silly.
Well, good.
Very heavy as well.
What is life without silliness?
Well,
so that's fair enough. And Martin, it's been a while. I mean, obviously we haven't done a podcast in a while because Easter got in the way. You've been keeping well?
Very well, thank you. I had 5 very nice days on the north coast of Cornwall. Specifically Polzeath, but actually my family has been visiting that region at Easter time, going back 50 or 60 years now. Even my dad's Cambridge buddies used to do that. So it's kind of stuck, and just love it down there. The coast is heavenly. I don't know any other way to describe it.
Yeah, it's a fabulous part of the world. I don't think I haven't been doing it 50 or 60 years, but I'm reasonably au fait with it. So yeah, it's a nice part of the world.
Yeah.
And Martin, that's right, not Martin. Ian, what have you been power washing?
I've been power washing a giant satellite dish. There was some more DLC dropped. I don't know whether it was probably a week or so ago. So every time I think I get away from it, there's like a new hook that drags me back in. I can't get away. It was nice because I'd been watching the Norwich game beforehand live, and we were awful. So it was like a nice kind of.
It's incredibly cathartic.
It is. It was just like I could do nothing. I don't have to think about the football. I just focus on cleaning this massive satellite dish with a power washer for fun. Yeah, that tells you how bad the football was, and that was a step up in entertainment doing that. But yeah, there's that, and I've also been playing a bit of Minecraft Legends, which is a new twist on obviously a classic game, which I'm still quite to get into it. It's good fun. I can see how it'll be really, really good when you're playing against other people PvP, but I'm just still figuring out the basics in campaign mode, so it's just taking a little bit of a while to get going. But it looks pretty good, and it's cute and colourful as Minecraft always is. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of people enjoying that as well.
Splendid. Okay, I think I've spoken to everyone, haven't I? That's all good. I haven't been doing a huge amount. I've got too many record players in the house. That's not just for AV. Please don't worry. They're not all for AV forums. I don't push that too far. Otherwise, I have been watching some dreadful television. Haven't been buying as much music as I usually do, but we'll talk about that at the end of things. And yeah, I'm afraid it's same old, same old. Those of you who are fond of visits by the cat into my screen will be delighted to know that he's just joined me on the table. So sooner or later, he will put in an appearance. Right, as I understand it, that's the end of our general chat. So there will be a short interlude, and then we will crack on with some hardware. Oh no, sorry, the voice in my head has just gone. No, we've got competitions first, which I'm delighted to say isn't my doing. Martin, could you run us through what our lucky people can win in terms of things for both? Actually, we've got hardware competitions, and then we've got some other things for our patrons as well.
Yes, so first of all, you can win a pair of Shure Ionic 50 wireless noise cancelling headphones in brown, worth £219 from our friends at av.com. And exclusive offers for patrons include Martin on limited edition 4K Blu-ray, City of Lost Children on 4K Blu-ray, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre on 4K Blu-ray.
Family favorite.
Yes. Star Trek Strange New Worlds on Blu-ray. Star Trek The Next Generation 4 movie collection on 4K
Nice.
Blu-ray, worth £80.
Yeah.
That's a nice one.
So head over to avforums.com, competitions to enter. All competitions are open to eligible AV Forums members or patrons resident in the UK.
Marvelous. We have no new winners. We'll announce some. We'll get the machine cranked up and work out who's won some things. We have some new patrons that we'd like to welcome. We've got Gary Heather, Brian Day, Luke Scurry, Jorah Singh, and Rob Colby. Thank you very much. Welcome to you all. We hope that we won't be too disappointing. As ever, your money goes towards making the site better. I mean, Phil says that one day we'll do a perfect podcast. I don't know. I'm simply not as optimistic as Phil.
Well, I think this is going pretty well so far, Ed. I think,
I don't know. Well, we'll see how we are. But no, who knows? But thank you ever so much for joining us on our journey as we creep towards, respectability, and we'll see where we go from there. And now, hopefully, it is actually time for an indent, and we will join you afterwards for the TV section. Right, hello again. Okay, I am going to be very dependent on other people for TV news because not really my forte. But Ian, as I understand it, we've got some new announcements from TCL to begin with.
Yeah, yes, indeed we do. They've basically announced the core of their 2023 lineup. They announced the C645 at the beginning of the month, and then more recently follow that up with the C745 and the C845. Rather unsurprisingly, these models follow on from last year's C635s, 735 and 835 models. New upgrades for this year include the new AI PQ 3.0 processor with promised improved brightness across the range, more local dimming zones, and basic tweaks across all three models. Top of the tree, the C845 is mini LED. It comes in 55 to 85-inch sizes. Promises a peak brightness up to 2000 nits, which is quite a lot. And dimming zones have also been increased. They start at 480 on the 55-inch up to 896 on the 85-inch. That's another quite sizable improvement over last year. Don't have improved pricing as yet for the UK, but reports are suggesting European prices start at around £1,500 for the 55-inch, €1,500, sorry, so there'll be conversion factor going on there, going up to around €3,000 for the 85-inch sizes, but those are still to be confirmed by TCL. 745 is the new QLED. It comes in 55 to 75, also adds full array local dimming to its lineup this year. Got a brightness up to 1000 nits and comes with all the upgraded color features that TCL like to shout about. And as with his C845, it comes with support for Dolby Vision, HDR10+, Dolby Atmos, and a few other bells and whistles. With European pricing for that one touted at probably around €1,100 for the 55, up to €1,900 for the 75-inch, but again, still to be officially confirmed. Meanwhile, if you're looking for an entry-level QLED, the C645 that was announced earlier, the offer screen size is down to 43 inches, all the way up to 85. But European pricing drops accordingly, so that starts off at around €700 apparently. Peak brightness also drops to 450 nits, and it's also limited to a 60 Hz native display, but it does come with TCL's dual line gate tech, which promises to deliver 120 Hz refresh rates for gamers if you hook it up with BGI 2.1. As always with TCL, it's worth pointing out their models tend to vary quite a great deal between regions. So people in the US might get very different models from those in Europe. So all the specs and info we've listed on the website is still open to some variations. So if you're interested in any of the products, you might want to check out your local TCL website or retailer. It's also worth noting that it does look like that might be all we're getting from TCL, at least in the short-term future. It looks like the C935 from last year and the low-cost P series of LCDs from 2022 are also likely to carry over. So,
well, we have been seeing more of this,
TCL,
haven't we? So and I don't necessarily, as I say, we've discussed this before. I don't necessarily think it is a bad thing to sell the same television for 2 years. I don't believe the world will end from doing so. Then, as I understand it, and we'll be quicker on this because you have very kindly pointed out that this has been on the site for some time, Sony confirmed UK pricing for some, but not all, of their 2023 lineup.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back a few weeks, but obviously it would have been covered in the last podcast, but we didn't have that one, so it's still considered valid. But yeah, basically, it started rolling out its products, and it does retain some topicality because I think the first product started rolling out on Friday, just gone, so they're still hot off the presses, so to speak. But yeah, the headline A95L with the new and improved Samsung display QD OLED panel isn't among the early arrivals, as that one's not coming till the end of summer apparently. But the A80L was one of the first to arrive, with the 55 and 65 inch models available now, priced at £2,399 and £2,999 respectively. 75 and 83 inch models follow later in the month. They're obviously suitably more expensive. As you mentioned, it's a little bit old, so I won't go through all the details. All the stories, all the information, all the rest of the pricing is up on the website. But you got information for the flagship mini LED, which is the X95L. Also, the X75WL is at the bottom end of the spectrum. Pricing for that starts at around £699 for a 43-inch display, going up to £1,500 for the 75-inch. So that's amongst your rather more affordable Sony options. And yeah, I think we've previously covered LG and Samsung as well. So all those pricing details and like the full lineups are on the website as well. But it does reach the point now where you're getting like the interesting comparisons, so you can kind of weigh up the varying price points. So like, for example, the LG's flagship OLED, the G3, the 55 inches at £2,599. Samsung's S95C flagship models at £2,699. So they're kind of in that similar ballpark. And you're kind of thinking that maybe Sony's A95L is going to drop into a similar window. So it offers up, some potentially tough choices for people who are looking to buy a new TV over the summer, because there's going to be a lot of good TVs at rather similar prices, even if they are a little bit more expensive than they were last year. But hopefully all the improvements will make them worthwhile.
Well, let's hope so. So yes, that's TV news sorted. Now, this is of more interest to more people. Jules, you've been hands-on with the G3. And I was saying to you beforehand that right now you could say almost anything, and I won't have the technical expertise to correct you on this, but I'm hoping, or at least anticipating, that it was reasonably good.
Well, did you know it's got unobtainium in it now?
Oh, splendid!
All sourced from a planet in somewhere down in the universe.
As long as we've upset a lot of blue people to get that, that's fine. That's good.
Well, those Smurfs are really angry now. So good. So yeah, I actually did watch Avatar 2 just last week on Kaleidoscope, and it was a fantastic experience. But you'll have to look at Martin's review for that. I think he did that on the front page, isn't it? But yes, I got my hands on a G3 for the first time this last week or so. I also calibrated a couple of G2s as well, which provided sort of quite a nice reminder of where we were at last year with these panels. Obviously, G2, G3, at the top end of the LG's tree. You're going to get the better performance out of those compared to the Cs. And the G3 was really, really nice. It was like the G2, but a bit better.
Who saw that coming?
So, yeah. But when when you're talking about annual improvements or refreshes of models, you're talking something that it's hardly noticeable. If you had last year's model, it's not really worth buying one this year. The improvements are particularly in peak brightness are not really noticeable. In terms of brightness, and obviously that's always the headline figure people look for, how many nits can it kick out. And we see as humans, we see logarithmically. So the increase of 50 nits or something like that is not at all visible. So it's not even worth talking about. Or certainly not changing your TV for an extra few nits like that. But this year we've gone up from. The G2s I measured this last week were hitting mid 900s, which is excellent. I have to say. So it's a really good peak output. Gives you lovely dynamic range, lovely specular highlights. The G3 measured 1300 nits calibrated. So, that's 350 plus nits over last year's model. That's quite a leap.
Yes.
And it does show itself, in those bright images, with these specular highlights, they really do sing and sparkle and, add that extra element of reality to the content you're watching. It's lovely to have over 1,000 nits because it gives the TV headroom. It's not tone mapping. So the difference, interestingly, between we put the Spears and Munsell, the famous horses scene, which a lot of people use. We use it on our reviews, where there's there's white content in the snow, which is pushing towards 1,000 nits. My C1, clips some of that content. There's no clipping on the G3 at all. And there's no difference really between the Dolby Vision presentation of that and the HDR10 version of that, because there is no need to clip on the 1,000 nit content because we have a 1,300 nit panel there. So it does it, with ease because it's got more than the 1,000 nits that it needs for that kind of content. So you get the sense of a TV that's not having to try that hard. And of course, that goes down to the difference between this year and last year is this MLA, this micro lens array wizardry that we now have this year, where with thousands of as it says, micro lenses placed on the OLED layer, it's able to suck out more of the light that's being created within the TV, but which was hitherto being lost internally. So you can get that out the front of the panel. And
so it's an efficiency saving as much as anything else. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. They share both last year, this year. So they've replaced the previous the move from the previous blue OLED material, which is based on hydrogen. They moved to deuterium. That was the unobtainium joke, by the way.
Yeah.
They moved to deuterium, which is it's more resilient. It can be driven harder as a result of that, and so you can get more brightness as a result. Consequentially, out of the deuterium-based panels, which is the G2 and the G3. But the essential difference there is the MLA, the micro lens array, which is sucking more of that light out of the panel, getting it out the front. The MLA also does help to a degree with the off-axis viewing. So you can sit at an insanely acute angle now and watch your G3, and you still get the same, pretty much the same picture from where you're sitting. It also helps with the slight pink tint that some of these panels have, none of which was really visible head on, and only at the most extreme stupid angle could you pick up a little bit of pinkness from the sides. So that's all good news, for people who've got sofas arrayed around.
You mean these weirdos that don't necessarily arrange everything perfectly on axis with their television? I've read about them, and I don't hold with it as a concept.
Yeah. Well, of course, if you've got, if you have, that's always been a problem with LCD TVs is, you get a nice picture head on, but as soon as you go slightly off axis, the picture went to pot. Of course, they've improved too, but not to this degree. So yeah, I think we can certainly with these G3s. The G2 was no slouch either. You can consign that to history. Calibration wise, brilliant. All the calibrated modes, SDR, Dolby Vision, HDR10, game modes. Everything was giving me average delta errors of between 0.2 and 0.4 for the grayscale, and the gamma and the color errors also in all of those modes was particularly low as well. Really, really, really great calibration, and of course it comes with the LG. I'm a particular fan of the LG's operating system. So yeah, it's like a G2, but it's better. Yeah, which
I like
is
the sound of that.
what you want.
Yeah. So actually, do you know what? I had this going in my head. It was like, well, it's actually better here, actually better there. It's refreshing in what has been technology that's been around for a while, where you've sat down and gone, yeah, compared to last year's one, this is a meaningful step forward. So
It is.
yeah, that's quite something. We're going to finish off the TV section. Thank you, Jules. Phil has left a note about what he's up to other than being on holiday. And I'm assuming it hasn't been written by him, because if it is, it's in the third person, which is awfully, awfully pretentious. Phil is currently working on the 65-inch LG C3 review with a comparison to last year's C2 model included. And that will be written and video reviews, but with video reviews and best settings. The G3 review will also be in the works, which we've just been talking about. I think we can probably rest assured that's going to be a fairly good review from next week, as well as the Sony A84L OLED. So he's a busy boy. There's output from him. But that wraps up the television section, and then we've got home cinema after that.
If you'd like to support the AV Forums podcast on a regular basis, then why not become a patron? Head over to patreon.com/AV Forums to sign up. You can also make a one-off donation through the Super Chat or via streamlabs.com/AV Forums. All donations help us to improve the website and the podcasts. Thank you to all our supporters.
Right then, home cinema section. I get to do lots less talking, and this is great. Right. Ian, I understand we have some news stories. Kicking off with some more Samsung soundbars.
Yeah, as before, this is a story from a couple of weeks ago, but basically it seems the gods have conspired against us, or in your favour, and that 90% of the news that seems to have flooded in the past couple of weeks has been HiFi based. Yeah. So it's been good for you. But yeah, a couple of weeks ago, Sony announced a new range of soundbars with the Q series, adding Samsung. What did I say? Sony? Oh, probably. All these everything collides after a while when you get all these product names and manufacturers together. Yes. Samsung has announced the new Q series with 6 new additions to its soundbar lineup. Top of the list is the HWQ990C, which comes with an 11.1.4 channel setup featuring 22 speakers, which comes with wireless, all together, not like. And that includes wireless rears and a subwoofer, and a price tag of £1,599. I won't go through the whole list, but next up is the Q930C. Drops things down to a 9.1.4 system, priced at £1,149, and so on. And it goes down to the 3.1.2 channel Q600C, which is at £599. And there's also a 3.1 channel Q60C, which hasn't been priced as yet, but presumably that will be confirmed fairly soon. Keep your eyes on the Samsung website, not the Sony one, to keep tabs on that. The likes of Dolby Atmos, DTS:X, and adaptive sound common across the range. Some of the pricier models also come with something called SpaceFit Sound Pro, which helps to auto-adjust the setup to suit your room's acoustics. So yeah, it's a new interesting looking range of subwoofers, which always seems to raise the question on the forums about whether the soundbar setups can compare to a more conventional speaker system. Obviously, most of the responses on the forums are like, no,
well, you see, I think I look at these from afar, and there's more people every year going, actually, do you know what? This is all the things I ever need. Martin, are you intrigued at having a look at any of these ones?
Yes, I will be. I'm getting down with quite a lot of soundbars recently, so yeah. Yes, whether they have 22 drivers in or just 2.
Well, yes, I mean, it must be said, no one can accuse you of elitism. You've looked at ones that you can buy for the price of a fairly hefty night out. So, I mean, no one would begrudge you looking at one with 22 drivers, I feel.
Yeah, and in fact, I've just been looking at one by Groovy, which is a Middlesex company who've been around since 2009. And I've just finished a review of a £50 soundbar, actually. $49.99.
So not even a big night out, in fact.
Exactly.
49.
Just a few pints.
Yeah, that is literally that's
Yeah.
4 pints, some pork scratchings, and a go on the quiz machine. So yeah, choose your evening out carefully.
Yeah.
And then we've got another relatively mature news story, as I understand it, from XGIMI as well, Ian.
Yeah, this is another one that goes back a little way, but it gives us some projectors to talk about, as were referenced earlier in the podcast. Yeah, a couple of new models. Stay topical because they effectively launch tomorrow, or if you're not watching us live, they launched on the 25th of April. But it's the new MoGo 2 and MoGo 2 Pro portable projectors. These are obviously aimed at the more casual viewing audience rather than like the company's more dedicated. They've got an Aura 4K UST home cinema solution, which is far more expensive and comes with far more features. But these are two cheaper models. They're priced at £359 for the standard MoGo 2, £529 for the MoGo 2 Pro. Reason being that the MoGo 2 is just limited to a normal HD display. Pro ups things to a full HD display, both delivering a brightness up to 400 ISO lumens and Android TV setups. And obviously come with a few other upgrades in terms of the automated display technology. It just makes it easier for these to be sort of basically plug and play models. If you look at some of the promotional material for it, the screenshots they provide or the promotional photos they supply, people, watching a film in their back garden, their kids playing with things in their room with cartoons up on the wall, that kind of thing. So these are kind of geared more towards kind of fun, casual, interactive use rather than those hardcore 4K movie viewings that you want to watch. But, it's just nice to see some, more interesting portable solutions on the market, really, for people who maybe don't want to spend thousands of pounds on a projector.
No, it looks quite interesting. So yeah, we'll see how we go. And then as a treat to you, again, this has been around for a while, but I understand that that we did BAFTAs for games, which I always find if you told me as a 9-year-old, as I was hammering away on a Commodore Amiga, that there'd be BAFTA awards for computer games. I wouldn't have paid you any attention because I was 9. But I mean, the fact that it's still a remarkable development in the great scheme of things. But there was an awards.
Did Power Wash make a clean sweep?
Outrageously, no, but it would have made an awful headline. That would have been my intro for the stars. I forgot it now. There was another news story that came up that would have made for a cracking Power Wash simulator pun, and I can't remember it now. But I'll remember it in about an hour's time when it's way too late. But yeah, basically, yeah, the BAFTAs have been around. The gaming BAFTAs have been around for a while. And yeah, the reason it's worth a mention, not only because obviously the article on the website, which lists all the winners and nominations, offers up a very handy place for people who are looking for some great game ideas that they might have missed. But yeah, the winners were announced end of last month, and whilst the likes of God of War Ragnarok and Elden Ring were among the rather more predictable winners, because they obviously come with massive AAA budgets, loads of money, hundreds of people working on them. But the surprise winner of the Game of the Year was something called Vampire Survivors, which very few people predicted, mainly because it looks like something that you could have played in the arcade in the 1990s.
You say it like that's a bad thing.
Yeah, I know. Well, it would have been a bad thing if it was around, because I would have spent an absolute fortune on it in that case if it was. Because it's incredible. The reason why I think a lot of people are happy that it won is because it champions the fact that gameplay can trump style and substance. It's because it also won the award for best game design, sort of signified because it's incredibly simple to play. It looks retro. It looks, like I say, it looks basic. It looks like something you'd have played on a Mega Drive or something like that. And you can, each playthrough only takes 30 minutes, and you're controlling most of it with just one thumb. You're just doing that whilst the little guy shoots everybody for you, does everything else. But it's incredibly addictive, and it like I say, it champions the fact that sometimes something simple and fun can be just as appealing as something that people spend billions of pounds making. I personally would have liked Elden Ring to win because it's an amazing game. God of War Ragnarok, very similar. I can't say I've played it that much, so I'm probably not as big a fan as other people might be. But yeah, it was a very, very worthy winner, I think, of the Best Game Award. But like I say, everything's up on the website. A lot of the other winners and nominees are listed. So if you're looking for the next good game to play, there's some great options on there for you to go and check out.
Excellent. Now we've got not one, but 2 doozies of AV reviews. We're going to kick off with Doug.
Just Ed,
yes.
I just wanted to mention one thing on the news front. There was some news stateside, which I'm sure Ian saw, but it's not necessarily relevant to our market, but it kind of is. by referral, if you like, because Netflix are closing down in September their DVD mailing service, which is a little bit like Love Film used to be here, and
I was
Cinema
astonished it was
Paradiso
still
is now.
going, to be honest.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
But it is. I actually use Cinema Paradiso over here because it's still a great way to get hold of content that's not necessarily available on other platforms, and I get a chance to look at 4K discs before necessarily buying them. Anyway, I was kind of sad to see that that's going. When I lived in the States, I was a Netflix customer from 1999 and using their disc service, and did so for many years before it became the streaming platform. It really did replace Blockbuster as a walk-in bricks and mortar rental store, and it was a revolution, actually. And it's kind of sad that it's going to say its last goodbye in September.
Yeah, I have. It's one. I guess when you think about just simple geography in the States, I guess there are vast tracts of it where internet speed is dismal. So I guess on a simple level, beyond your more sort of discerning use of disc rental services, I guess that there was a demand was retained because there were certain places where streaming simply couldn't cut it. But yes, I mean, do you fear for the Paradiso service, or do you think that's a more specialist undertaking and is likely to keep going for a bit?
Do you know, I wondered that, but I think they will probably hang in there, and I hope they do, because it's a very good service. Netflix used to be dirt cheap. I mean, you could get 5 discs or 8 discs at a time. It was amazing. Obviously, the numbers don't add up to provide that kind of service anymore, but I think Paradiso will hang around, yeah.
Oh, fair
I
enough.
should point out that we did actually cover this on the website, but it was amongst another story with Netflix also announcing that its basic with ad service was going to increase from standard HD up to full HD. So there are some details up there. And since then, I have seen reports that 1 or 2 companies have been linked possibly with buying out Netflix's DVD service. So it might live on, but that's obviously there could just be rumor and speculation. Some people just say something to get a couple of headlines. But the news did throw up some fun facts, which I can quickly pitch as a quiz. The very first DVD that it shipped was in March 1998. If anybody's not seen the story, you can guess what it is. I'll be very impressed. 1998 film. I can narrow it down. It was a Tim Burton film, if that helps.
Sleepy Hollow?
Nope. Sleepy Hollow was 90s. Yeah, was that before then or after then?
I don't know.
I don't think it might not even relate to the.
I just know that was one of the very earliest DVDs that I bought, so that was the only reason I was thinking about that.
Actually, I mean, it might not even relate to the year the film came out. I'm not sure. I never thought to check, but because obviously it was just the first one that they shipped out the door, so it could have been an older film. But yeah, it was Beetlejuice.
Oh right, okay.
But the biggest surprise was the most rented film of all time throughout the history. They shipped like 5.2 billion discs over the years. Was The Blind Side, the Sandra Bullock film.
What?
Yeah, I know. Of like all you'd never have guessed. I could have left this quiz open for days and nobody would ever have guessed it. But apparently, according to Netflix itself, that is the most rented film in its DVD history.
Coming soon to a pub quiz near you.
Yep. If anybody wins any money on a pub quiz from that question, I want to.
No, absolutely, yeah. We have the proof. This is being recorded. We'll know. So yeah, we want crediting on that. Right? Yes. No. A very valid point, Martin. So we'll see how that pans out. Right. So Doug, you've been looking at the Bowers & Wilkins 700S3 series as a 5.1 package. Obviously, I've looked at this. I've looked at the 705, the smallest, the largest of the stand mounts as a stereo review. So I have some inkling on this. But you, going back to what we were saying earlier, in terms of our reviewing not necessarily being automatically knowing how something is out of the box, this wasn't these didn't immediately blow you away. No,
they didn't. And I was actually very conscious of the fact that you had reviewed the 705s. I knew you'd probably read my review, and you're such an astute reviewer. I thought you might point out there was something wrong with my ears.
I wouldn't go that far.
If I didn't like them. But I certainly at first I didn't. Well, I should start by saying what I reviewed. So it was the 702s, which are the floor standards, which are the top end of the new 700 series. And they're beautiful. They're huge things, and they come on plinths, and they're essentially as is the whole 700 series, sort of mini 800 series. So they benefit from a lot of trickle down technology from the 800 series. So it has the sort of distinctive tweeter on top arrangement, where the tweeter is sort of housed in it's a carbon dome tweeter housed in an aluminium sort of special housing that sits on the top of the cabinet, and is entirely decoupled from the cabinet. What else has it got in there from the 800 series? The continuum cones with decoupled mid-range drivers that sit in little pods, which are very interesting things. There's picture and description in the review, and you can sort of press the outer ring of the pod where the mid-range driver sits, and it flexes ever so slightly, such as it's decoupling from the cabinet. So it was the 702, the HTM 71 center, which is a three-way center with all that tech that I just described, and the 705s that Ed reviewed as surrounds, which are sort of ludicrously over-specified surround speakers, really, and then a 10-inch DB4S subwoofer, which I'll come on to. I absolutely adored. Really enjoyed that. So yeah, it's essentially a mini 800 series. So I went into the review thinking, well, these are going to be phenomenal. Sort of set them up as I usually do in my room, and sort of angled them all very precisely on axis to where I sit. And the way I'd normally start testing is I don't run any sort of calibration, and I usually just listen to the front two in stereo, just uncalibrated, just so that I can kind of get a sense of where their natural tone is, their kind of natural voice. And I got through maybe sort of half an hour's listening, and I really wasn't sold at first at all. It took me a long time to acclimatize to them. And initially, I essentially felt that it had slightly too much upper frequency energy. I wouldn't quite go as far as saying bright, because they weren't, but they did. They sounded like they had a little bit almost artificial air about them. So I attempted to toe them out ever so slightly, which is, you receive wisdom. That's the way. If something's slightly bright, you toe it out ever so slightly, and then you're sitting slightly off axis to them, and you're getting less of that sort of directional high frequency energy. And ever so slightly, I would say that probably 10-20 centimeters to the side of each ear. So it really wasn't very pronounced at all. But once I did that, and once I sat back down and kind of warmed to them a little bit more, I felt like I've found their groove. And once I was in that, I was absolutely sold. Absolutely adored them. And the first night when I was listening to music, I was up till 1 o'clock just going through tracks that I know very well. And there are a couple of tracks that I was playing back over and over again. The Chain Fleetwood Mac is just one that I know inside out, and I listen to very specific points in the track, and there were bits that were just clear as a bell in a way that I had never heard. I won't say I was hearing, new sounds or things that I'd never. Exactly. But it was certainly crystal clear in a way I don't think I've ever heard previously, and I really enjoyed that. I went through the Chain maybe 3-4 times. Just I couldn't quite believe it was sounding so different. So that was them in stereo, and then once I'd sort of got to that point where I was thinking, okay, well, these are actually something special, because I was convinced it must be hidden there somewhere, given how sort of widely loved the 700 series is. So then I calibrated them with the Trinov and listened to them in multi-channel. I calibrated the sub prior to calibrating in the Trinov using its own app, which is really interesting. Actually, it's a phone app, and you use your phone's microphone, and you place the phone on top of the sub to start the sort of calibration process, and then you take the phone to where you sit, and I think it did sort of an 8-point measurement. I can't remember off the top of my head. It's in the review, but there was a sort of a stress-free calibration to the whole process, like simplicity to the whole process, that I think made it a bit of a revelation. Usually with subs, you're having to, find there's a sort of an LCD screen on the back of the subwoofer that you have to sort of read upside down, and you're fiddling with PEQ filters to sort of get it calibrated before you run your full calibration. With the Bowers sub, it was just a case of putting my phone on top of it and putting my phone at the listening position.
We've come a long way from stomping around the house, stomping around the room with SPR meters.
Crawling around is I think it's called the subwoofer crawl, isn't it? Where you're trying to find.
I don't miss that.
Yes. So that was calibrated at all. Sat down, listened to it, and loved it. The slightly sort of accentuated high frequencies weren't a problem at all after the calibration, and particularly after a bit of toe out, which I didn't toe out the surrounds. They were all bang on access, same with the center. But that translated to just this incredibly detailed sound, which is, I definitely probably favor detail in surround mixes more than warmth. I just find it incredibly immersive when you have this incredibly detailed soundscape, and you really got that with the Bowers. And the fact that all of the speakers shared the same sort of driver tech and in identical tweeters all around gave this sort of seamless coherence to the whole presentation, which was wonderful, and I really truly enjoyed it. And that DB4S, once calibrated, was stonkingly good for a 10-inch sub. I mean, I'm speaking as someone who my day-to-day sort of subs are two 18-inch DIY massive pro driver subs. But I didn't feel like I missed a huge amount just running with the 10-inch DB4S. It was ludicrously competent. It weighed a ton as well. I think it's something like under 40 centimeters.
How much is it, Doug?
Oh, I mean, it's in the review. I think it's knocking on $2,000. I think the whole package came in at something like
it was 11,400 for the package, and I know that the 702 takes up the bulk of that. So I was just doing some mental calculations. It can't be. I mean, it's not money. It's not given away, but it does strike me as not unreasonably priced for the level of performance you're ascribing to.
I remember thinking precisely that. I remember thinking this is a real contender of a subwoofer. And the thing is, where is it? Just hang on, it's in the review. 1,600.
There we go. Yeah. That's
so. That puts it in a very competitive place. Actually, its pricing, if you look at what the SVSs of the world are offering at that price point, and the Arendals, you're getting much larger subwoofers, but I don't think Bowers are really trying to compete with them. They're trying to make something that sounds fantastic, looks great, and is actually relatively discreet. It isn't one of these huge ported monsters. It's something that you can sort of stick in the corner of your room quite happily, and it looks nice. And yeah, it really did sound phenomenal.
Nice.
So overall, I was delighted. I think I gave it highly recommended. It was unusual as a review goes in that I've never taken quite as long
to dial in,
to dial a system in, but once it was there, it sort of paid back that effort.
Have you had much dealings with Bowers and Wilkins stuff prior to this point, Doug?
I don't. This is the first time I've ever reviewed them.
Yeah, it's really interesting what you're talking about, because I've done a few over the years. There are certain things I sort of anticipate them doing now, and it's interesting, all the process that you've described subconsciously in my space, which is relatively well damped, I don't have to toe out, but whereas almost everything else that sits in this listening space has toe in, they point dead ahead, and it's something that's sort of done as an automatic thing. And it's do you know what? It's both interesting and also quite reassuring that your experience is do sort of overlap my own in this one. So yeah, the full review that Doug's written, and it's a damn good review, is up on the site for you to read at leisure. And if you have any specific questions, I'm sure they can be put into the comment section, and someone will come along, either ourselves or someone who is equally well versed in the things, to provide an answer for them. What's going to happen now is that Martin is going to start talking about the Emotiva processor, the BasX MC1 13.2 channel processor. I'm going to disappear very quickly because I'm acutely aware that for some reason my son's supposedly quiet gaming session has become something where he's yelling at the top of his lungs. So I'm going to attend to that, and I'm going to be back inside of 90 seconds, and I will pick it up from there. So Martin, it's a processor, and I looked at this and I thought, that's another processor review and the price tag will be used car hefty, but it's not.
Correct. So this is an interesting product category, I think, and Emotiva is an interesting company as well. And you may not be as familiar with them here in the UK, because stateside they use a direct B2C or business to consumer model. So there are no middlemen, there are no stores or salespeople from which you buy them. You buy direct, so it's a little bit like SVS in that respect. And interestingly, both those brands, SVS and Emotiva, are distributed by Karma AV in Yorkshire, who have a massive portfolio of AV brands and are a pretty impressive company in themselves. So anyway, the MC1 is Emotiva's most basic or pared down preamp, multi-channel preamp processor, and the BasX branding is probably appropriate. And for BasX, you can read BasX if you like, but this very much is not a toy. It actually retails for as little as $12.99, which is still great value, I think, over this side of the pond, although it is a little cheaper stateside. And of course, stateside, you are buying direct, so there's a lot of different parameters if you buy these units over there. So it's a little difficult to compare. And of course, all our distributors here have to pay VAT as well. So it's loaded, this issue of stuff being more expensive over here. But I think this is a great way to make a start on going down the route of a pre and power amp combo. And I think this is probably what everyone who is into AV and home cinema will eventually aspire to if they don't already. But this product gives you the opportunity to upgrade as and when funds allow, because you can buy a processor like this, and of course you can buy budget power amplifiers, and when you get to it, you may decide to upgrade preamp, and so it goes on. But the MC1 can decode 13.2 channels of audio, which you can assign to, if you're using all the channels, to a 7.2.6. Yes, that's 6 overheads.
Blimey.
Or you can trade 2 of those overhead channels for 2 widths. And that's very clearly marked out in the manual how you do that. But of course, that encompasses Dolby Atmos, DTS:X, and will pass through all of the HDR flavors, including Dolby Vision. So this box basically just decodes surround sound and not much else. And this is another reason why I like this box. I just like boxes that do what they're meant to and do it
the
well.
Ron Seal effect.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think it's a worthy product category, and it's not a common one either. In fact, there are not many manufacturers who are doing this. And of course, I know people cite Tone Winner, Chinese company, who do have products in a similar category. There's another company stateside called Outlaw, but they've never done a I don't think they've ever done an immersive audio preamplifier. So it's kind of a unique category, and like I said, I like it. It's this the MC1 is less than a 2U rack height, which I think is also a delight, rather than the common 3 or 4 rack heights. It only weighs 4.5 kilograms and is only 33 centimeters deep. So that's perfect for making all your 15 or more connections, and gives you a lot of potentially space at the back of your shelf cabinet as well. If you actually look at the processor with the hood open, it doesn't look like there are that much electronics in there, and that's why it does come in at that very nice, manageable weight. Although it's nicely built, the front vacuum fluorescent display is a little bit cheap feeling. I always like a few audio brand logos to pop up, but that would add obviously to the base manufacturer cost, and that will be passed on to you. So again, no frills. It does what it says on the tin. The setup menu is also a bit clunky. It doesn't use a walkthrough guide or even stick to a kind of more linear approach. I mean, even the more esoteric preamplifiers make it a little bit easy, but I did feel I was fumbling backwards and forwards to to get to the start of where I needed to be in the setup.
Did it become more intuitive over time?
Yes, it did, actually, to be fair, yes. And once you've got a hold on it, there is actually plenty of customization of sources and tweaking available to you. The MOQ room correction itself did a nice job in my room. It identified some nasty frequency dips and corrected them. And it only takes a few minutes to complete. So that was a big surprise. I mean, I think it was about 5 or 10 minutes. I didn't time it, but it shoots these very loud test tones at you and seems to sort out the room sort of reasonably quickly. It also has this interface of graphs where it shows you what those dips and those troughs and peaks are and how they are being corrected, which is quite a nice feature. And even I measured the distances with the tape measure, not with the laser measure, and actually the distance measurements that came back from the auto test tones and auto measurements from the MOQ were almost completely spot on. So I was quite impressed with that as well. Yeah. Dialogue, music, and sound effects I felt, precision placement in the sound stage, and the audio can really engulf you. I did think the sound could be a little clinical sounding, but to be fair, that could also be a symptom of its accuracy. And I would also not expect a product like this to sound like a Storm Audio or a Lingdorf or a Trinov. It's just a different category of product. But, like I said, again, it's a great starter for somebody who is looking to upgrade and build out as their budget increases.
Well, I'm actually going to put you on the spot for this one, and Doug can join in on this. Before I do this, Jules, are you all right for time, or is this a sensible point for you to call it a day?
Probably best for me to depart now and go and get my second black eye of the week.
Yeah, try not to kill anyone, and thank you as ever for your contributions this evening.
Cheerios, guys.
Right, cheers.
Bye, Jill.
Right, Doug and Martin, this is a question. Now, this gets asked in lots of different flavors, but you essentially, Martin, there's a positive review, and what you've just said there about the level of performance that we should expect relative to the more expensive processors that I know that Doug owns an example of, and I know that you both have considerable experience of. If my budget was, for the sake of argument, I don't know, £6,000-7,000 for electronics, is there more mileage in buying a particularly burly amplifier and making do? And that's a terrible thing to say because it's a fairly elitist thing to say. But would I do better looking to use this affordable processor in the short term coupled to a particularly good amplifier? Or if someone's looking to do this breakdown, would you say processor first with either second-hand or affordable Class D amplification and look at improving that in the long term?
That's a very good question.
I try.
I have to say, I think I would veer towards this model. If I had that £7,000 to spend, I would drop the grand on this processor and maybe go for a Parasound or Bryston or something like that. Yes, if that was my budget, I'd do that because I think the improvements you're going to get in the processing power of immersive audio are going to be small increments until, of course, when you get all the way up to the very top processors. But I think you're looking at pretty small increments. And like I said, this thing performs very well. I mean, it does sound like a high-end processor. It's a good piece of kit.
Doug, is that what you do, or you take it differently?
No, I take a slightly different view. But I mean, I guess the first question I would ask is what your speakers are. So in the need for a particularly burly amplifier will be dictated by how sensitive your speakers are. And typically I tend to favor for home cinema extremely high efficiency speakers because they tend to sound a little bit more dynamic. And all my speakers are very high efficiency for that reason, which means that the actual demand on your amplifier is very significantly reduced. You don't see, in power terms, you don't see a huge difference between, something that's 100 watts potentially and something that's 300 watts, because that's just extra headroom when you've got 96 dB efficient speakers. So that's kind of where I sit on it. I think increasingly, and I should say I am very much in the Class D high efficiency, Class D Hypex based sort of amplifier camp with extremely sort of low noise. I far prefer those to your sort of fry an egg on it style amplifiers.
I'll bring you around to my
But yes, I know that's a debate for another day. But increasingly, I think that the real distinction between processors and AVRs to an extent is the room correction, and that's where the battle is being fought hardest amongst manufacturers at the moment. And I mean, if you look at the real top end of the tree, the Storms and the Trinovs, they're doing their utmost to come up with the new, fancier, more bells and whistles to their room correction. So really, room correction can make a huge difference.
Yeah, it does. I would totally agree with that. But again, you're looking at 10 grand for a preamp, where you're getting those very sophisticated room corrections, and they are amazing. I mean, and I have to say that category is going off the chart at the moment, but this is coming back to something that really is manageable for the man on the street. And
it is pleasing to see
Emotiva.
something which exists where the price point doesn't bring to mind a well specified small car. So I mean, that is it's a heartening thing to see.
Exactly.
But it's also, as I say, I think what's interesting there is two different takes. And what's more, there's a lot to be said for Doug's approach. It must be said, sensitivity, if you can look towards more sensitive speakers, it's quite remarkable what you can achieve on not a lot of power. Many years ago, one of my first work trips to the United States, I went to see a gentleman who he was a dealer for the company I was working for at the time, but his AV system was an Arcam AV9 processor, I'm showing my age here, with 5 Audio Note AN0 valve monoblocks into 5 Klipsch horns. So he had 45 watts in total, 5 times 9 watts. And do you know what? You could have driven my eardrums into the center of my brain on 9 watts into Klipsch horns. He didn't need anything more than that. It was face bending. So there are different ways of skinning that particular cat. Yeah. So yeah, there's so I look forward to Doug switching to an all valve based setup and not having to do any heating. So all good. Marvellous. Right. Time is ticking on. So I guess it's time finally for the hi-fi section, which will be after this short interlude.
If you enjoy the podcast on YouTube, then please like and subscribe. If you're listening to the audio version, then please leave us a rating on your podcast app. We invite you to email questions and feedback to podcast@avforums.com and join in with this episode's discussion thread in the podcasts forum at AV Forums.
Right then, hi-fi, we won't take too long on this. So the first thing I'm going to say is we've got some news stories which Ian's going to run through. Ian alluded to the fact that there's more hi-fi news than there is AV news at the moment. There is a good reason for this. We are now mere weeks away from the Munich high-end show. It's the big event for 2-channel. So if you don't announce at the show, you announce that something is going to be at the show. So there's lots and lots of hi-fi news stories at the moment. We're not doing favoritism. We're not prioritizing hi-fi news over AV news. It comes in cycles. As we move further down into the year, there will be less hi-fi news and more multi-channel news and more TV and projector news. So that's why things are like they are, in case you feel that we're ignoring things. But first of all, Ian, we are looking at the second season of Rotel's Michi amplifiers.
Yes, indeed we are. Yeah, they've announced 3 new models in total, upgrading on their predecessors from a few years ago, which are the X3 and the X5, getting Series C status as integrated amplifiers, and also the I've written down the PS5. I'm pretty sure it's just the P5.
Yeah.
I was in gaming mode, thinking about all things PlayStation. And yeah, the P5 Series 2 stereo amplifier, which are both set to launch sometime around now. I think they just said late April, and we are in late April, so almost any day, I'd imagine. They are priced at £8,199 for the X5, £5,999 for the X3, and £4,999 for the new P5. Just a few of the headlines which you can probably talk about more, but we're assured that there are like 320 upgrades more than across all 3 models compared to their predecessors. Come with new DACs, re-engineered circuitry. X5 Series 2 is a 600 watt integrated amp compared to the X3's 350 watt Class AB output, but both seem to tick a lot of the right boxes in terms of inputs, although the price tags are quite a jump on the previous model. So I guess the question is, how are they likely to shape up in terms of value for money?
Well, we'll see. I do intend to try and get the X3 in for review. I looked at the original X3. I thought it was excellent. In fact, the one thing I'm interested to see if they've done is they've made any changes to the phono stage, because that was, I mean, there wasn't a huge amount wrong as far as I could see with the original. So I'll be very interested to see what they've done with the new ones. It's obviously for a number of people, Rotel is not your first name that you associate with amplifiers at this price point. But in terms of value for money, I don't recall a product that cost less that came closer to herniating me moving it around than the X3. So if you ascribe value to weight, this is an extremely good value product. So we'll see how that goes. And then at a more terrestrial point, we've got new Q Acoustics speakers.
Yes, the 5000 series has been announced as its latest lineup, which is made up of 5 speakers in total, which is the 5010 or the 5010 and the 5020 bookshelf and Standmount speakers. 5040 and 5050 are floor standing options, and you also get the 5090 center channel. As yet, there's no new sub for the collection, but Q Acoustics is offering up its existing QB12 if you wanted to get some ready-made 5.1 package direct from them. I guess the headline feature is the company's new C-Cube continuous curved cone design that we're told, and I quote, elevates the 500 series beyond its class and will form a technical platform for years to come. There's also some nice looking finishes to choose from. I think the 5020 stand mounts and the 5040 floor standers are available now. Prices for those are £599 and £900 respectively. 5010 bookshelves follow in May, priced £499, along with the centre, £399. We're still waiting on confirmation on when the 5050 speakers will come. And like I mentioned, there's combination deals as well, but all the details for that will be up on the story on their website.
Yes, I've got a pair of the 5020s in at the moment. They will be appearing on AV Forums. There'll be a slight delay. They have been promised to another publication. So the review will be written and then it'll have to sit for a while. But I can give you a sneak preview that they are very, very good. You'll note that there isn't the word concept in the title. These are not concept speakers. So this is, if you like, in some ways, they're more closely related to the more affordable Q Acoustic speakers. But no one seems to have told the 5020 that, so it's extremely good for £600. I can't say too much more than that at this point, but yeah, this is quite an impressive piece of kit. It also means that after all the time that they've been around, Q Acoustics now has a consistent price range, a model range that goes from £250 to £4,700, pretty much all the way through now. So that's that means that you can now get on board at low prices and go all the way through up to the top. So as I say, there will be a review coming for that, and I would imagine if it's offered that Doug, you'd have a look at the AV version of that as well at some point.
Absolutely.
Good, marvelous. So we'll cover off on that. Again, I'm not going to spend too much time on this because it's on the front page at the moment on the Monday. It'll gradually make its way down as all reviews do. Focal Vestia 1. This is Focal's the most affordable member of the Vestia family. They've done 2 basically back-to-back releases. So there's the Vestias and then there's the Thavers underneath that. £800 for the Vestia 1, and it is it's an interesting product because all the things that Doug was saying about positioning, if you think that Bose and Wilkins need some work, Focal don't do plonk and play. It takes a lot of faffing to dial a pair of Focal speakers in, and this is no exception. If you do not want to expend more than 30 seconds on setup, these are not the pair of speakers for you. If you are willing to do that, they are very, very, very good. It's something that Focal has been doing more recently is they, without losing any of the things they're good at, this is tonally accurate, extremely detailed, and able to dig enormous amounts of information out of music. But it manages to do that whilst also not tearing to pieces my more cretinous choice in music, and it manages to be fun. There are points where I was out and out relentlessly enjoying myself. Photos just popped up of my cat one of my cats enjoying the speaker as well. It's a tremendously entertaining thing to listen to, and it's an interesting product because if you like what this speaker does, I can promise you that you are then going to be on board with the Focal family up to the price of small houses. They haven't achieved the extraordinary thing of all of their speakers now do these things, but just incrementally better each time. It's a fantastic introduction point to a brand that has offerings to almost any budget short of Elon Musk's. So if you like what they do, this is the last brand of speakers that you'll ever buy. The other interesting one, and we generally leave matters of decor to people who have taste and decency, but these are. If you read the blurb, you'll see that they have a light wood finish. Just to be very clear on this, the light wood finish is white. It is sort of white ash, sort of very early 90s. And this could have looked absolutely dreadful, but they've done enough in terms of the driver contrast and some other detailing on it to ensure that actually I rather like them. I'm going soft in the head, and I've had a number of white products come through recently that I've rather liked. So aesthetically, I don't necessarily know if they're going to be everyone's cup of tea, but it is an extremely impressive product. Full reviews up on the site. I say I don't want to devote too much time to this because it's all there. I've said all the things I wanted to say in the review, and if you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments section, and I'll do my best to answer them. They are here for a couple more days, so if you have a pertinent question of what they do, if you do X, I can do X. So that is up on the site for you to read. In terms of other things coming through, we have one last speaker review from the set of reviews I did last month, which is completely different. I don't want to say too much about it, but those are speakers that are part of an entirely different world. And then we've got I've obviously been looking at the Q Acoustics. There is a very interesting pair of headphones coming through as an Audiolab amplifier, which, I mean, we've already looked at the 9000A. I thought that was the one to go for. I'd like to say that actually I got it the wrong way around, and the one that I'm now looking at is really quite something. And there'll be, and there's a couple of other things in the pipe. You'll be astonished to hear, as is that regular listeners to the podcast know, that things are a bit last minute because just trying to get hold of anything in the UK is a bit hit and miss at the moment. But there will be some reviews coming through. All this is left for me to do is album, vinyl, and playlist of the podcast. It's been ages since we did this, so this is, again, a bit historical in itself. Album, you'll have to bear with me. This is a real title. I am not yanking your chain on this one. This is the very swanky named Mirage in the Mojave by James Alexander Bright and the Flying Mojito Brothers. James Alexander Bright is a DJ. He's been around for donkey's years. He's produced a number of songs where you won't know any of the titles, but if you go out and about, they've just been doing the rounds in heavy rotation. The Flying Mojito Brothers are, as the name suggests, brothers, Americans. They have taken a suite of 6 of his records, tweaked them into a sort of cohesive set. It's available to buy on Bandcamp. It's on all the major streaming services. I just really like this. It's music to pop on in the background and away it goes. And before you know it, you're not doing any work. You listen to the music, which is all you can ask for, really. And I'm aware that I've done a number of weird albums in terms of sound and behavior for recommendations. This is just fundamentally good-natured dance music. Vinyl is a band called Teleman. They've been around for a decade now. Their latest album is Good Time, Hard Time. Don't be put off by the cover, which looks like it was drawn by a primary school child. It's a really, really good listen. And I have got the vinyl on order. It hasn't turned up yet, but I do have another Teleman vinyl album, and it's the same label. So I'm hoping that will not humiliate me and be dreadful to listen to. This is just, say, they've done some decent songs of late, and hopefully, give it a listen. Again, it's on the major streaming services. You don't need to buy it on vinyl if you really don't want to, and that's probably very sensible. And I will just give a quick note. Obviously, it was Record Store Day on Saturday. I hope that those of you that do Record Store Day found the things that you wanted and didn't get there and find that someone had simply bought all of them and put them on eBay, which does seem to be sort of the issue that bedevils it these days. And I'm afraid I didn't buy anything this time round. Some of the items looked vaguely interesting, but not necessarily at the price that they were being offered at, and not necessarily with me having to stand outside at 7 o'clock in the morning to wait to buy them. All that's left to do is playlist. Spotify again for this one. Spotify's been churning out some decent playlists of late. This one, my running order has now decided to give up on me. Simply called Blogosphere. And what it actually is referencing is the early days of sort of blogging and personal website items, so 2005 through sort of 2010 sort of thing. So it's got all manner of different things from there. I found it a diverting listen, if not a life-changing one. And if you ask for the link, if you can't, you can obviously stick Blogosphere into Spotify and it will find it for you. Otherwise, we can drop the link into the comments section. So those are my recommendations. And then all that's left for me to do is the housekeeping. So the next AV Forums podcast is the Movies Edition on Monday, the 1st of May, 2023. That's starting at 8:30 because you just can't get the Movies Boys in earlier than that. The main AV Forums podcast will return 2 weeks on Wednesday. We are not doing the bank holiday time because that's Monday. May is littered with bank holidays. So we are back on Wednesday, the 10th of May, and we're doing that at our usual time of 7 p.m. That is it for this week's show. My thanks to Ian, Doug, Jules, and Martin. If you've enjoyed this podcast, my sympathies. But please give us a like and a subscribe to the channel, plus hit the notification bell so you don't miss out when we publish our live streams, product reviews, and more. You can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and bookmark avforums.com for the latest reviews, news, and videos. Plus, and this really is the optional extra, why not leave us a 5-star rating on whichever service you use if they allow it, but only if you enjoyed the show. As I say, that's a very structural if. I'm Selley. Thank you for watching and listening, and good night.